Welcome everyone to Flow at Work. My name is Emma Thomas, and I am super excited by my guest today here in the Flow at Work recording studio. Not only is she a cornerstone of the Americas team, she is a killer project manager and overall a wonderful human being. It is Brianna Culver. Welcome, Brianna.
Hello, Emma. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, cool. Well, I am so excited to have Brianna here, to have you here on Flow at Work. I really wanted to hear from you on some functional things that I've been sort of throwing around in my head recently. And one topic that comes up on almost every single project that I've been on, that I've heard about, is requirements. Requirements seem to be this very elusive thing that, like, it's just so hard to get good requirements, to write good requirements, to pass good requirements off to your developers. And so I hear that you have a very strong background in this, Brianna, and that you may or may not have a cool little interview tactic that you've used before. And so I was hoping you could share with us and the world how to write a good requirement. Walk us through it.
So we use user stories and we use the invest model. So good user story is independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. So we want to make sure that, it is independent of all other stories. It needs to have good acceptance criteria. It needs to be in a size that's bite-sized, right? We want to make sure we can do it in a sprint. We need to have performance criteria identified, and we want to make sure it can be demoed, right? So once we finish that little chunk, we want to be able to demo it and say, hey, here's what we've done, here's what it looks like, and we should be able to do that in bite-sized pieces throughout the sprint.
I love too that part of the invest model is the testable, because I feel like that's probably something, and that ties into the acceptance criteria that often gets overlooked, right? So what is your sort of quality check or quality control process? Like, what are things to look for, either red flags that signify a bad requirement, or maybe like if you're reviewing these and you see a good requirement, like what are some things you look for on the delivery side?
Sure. So the biggest part about writing a story is we need to know who's the persona, right? What's the person, the role? Who is it? Is it a user? Is it a manager? Who's going to be doing the item? And then what do they want to do? And then so that they can do what, right? What's the purpose in that? And the big part about, going back to the testable that you said, is making sure that you know who the person is who's going to accept the user story. Because if you go to test it and no one's identified and you don't know who's going to test it, then where does it go from there? How do we know that it's not exactly the way that the person wanted it, or that it is exactly the way the person wanted it?
I love that you bring that up, because it hits on something that is near and dear to my heart, coming from a change management background, and that is stakeholder analysis. And the way that you identify who the key stakeholders are ties into the testing approach, and being able to know who should be engaged as a super user, a UAT tester, et cetera. And I think that so much can be done probably at the beginning to lay the foundation for that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Now, I do want to ask you, I'm really glad that, you were hired after me, so I didn't have to interview with you, because I'm not sure I would have done a great job with this. But tell us about the interview question that you have used in the past to maybe see how candidates do or don't approach requirements well.
So I like to use creating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich as part of my interview process with analysts. And it's just because if you ask somebody, how do you create a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And they say, oh, well, you need to get out the peanut butter and jelly. Okay, that's a great start. But where are we getting the peanut butter from? And where are we getting the jelly from? And is it smooth or crunchy peanut butter? Is it grape jelly or strawberry jelly? Is it jelly or is it jam? So you can kind of see their thought process to see who goes really high level of I'm just going to get it out and I'm going to put it on the bread, and who goes, I'm going to go into the kitchen, into the cupboard, and get the crunchy peanut butter and put it on the counter. And then I'm going to open the top and I'm going to get a knife out of the drawer. So how detailed are they when you ask those questions?
All right, we're giving away our trade secrets here. Peanut butter and jelly questions in platformation interviews, everybody. Oh goodness, no. Um, Thank you for that. I do think, I mean, it's something that I've struggled with too, in the past, writing requirements. And I feel like it has so many cascading effects too, because if you think about what you're handing off to your developers to build in the system and, create for the customer, you really do need to have that sort of sorted out. What advice would you give if you do find that maybe some of the requirements haven't been written well and you get to the point where it was developed wrong and you need to do some mitigation or some cleanup work, how do you navigate those situations as a delivery lead?
So if there's a defect that's found, or if someone says, well, that's not quite what I envisioned, at the very beginning of the process, creating the user stories, a lot of times we will do visuals as well. So we may say, here's the screen and here's where the button's going to go, or here's where the new field would go. So sometimes we're able to kind of just show them a little mock-up of the UX design of where the fields will be or where the buttons will be. If we get past that stage and it's just not exactly what they'd like, then we make sure we do go through, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. And so we'll make sure we do some visuals with the client to make sure we're all speaking the same language, we're all on the same page. And we'll try to, if it's a true defect, get that cleaned up, of course, in that sprint. If it is truly a complete misunderstanding of the system and the way it works, and it needs to be completely rewritten and redone, then that may be something for the next sprint.
Yeah. And on any project, you learn as you go and you hope to implement those lessons learned on the next one, right?
Absolutely.
I think my last question for you, and then I will let you go back to your very busy day, is you have the platform now. I'm giving you the microphone. If you could wave your magic wand and tell all customers a PSA of, hey, if you do XYZ, this will set both you and us up for success on the project. What would be your wish list of like things that customers could do to prepare for their next implementation and giving good requirements?
My recommendation would be that the key stakeholders in each group for the implementation get together prior to meeting with Platformation and really nail out what's important to them, what are their must-haves, and that way they've cemented that as an organization. And so when they meet with us at Platformation and we start going through the user stories, they already have an idea of exactly what it is that they're looking to accomplish. Doesn't necessarily mean they know every button, every field, but just in a whole, I would like to do this thing for the users because they need to be able to do this thing, right? And that already helps us set up a good story.
I love it, especially too, because so often organizations are so siloed and HR doesn't talk really to people outside of HR and finance and legal, whatever. And so then you enter into this implementation with a vendor like Platformation and, the system like ServiceNow. And even if you're doing a WSD implementation or an ITSM implementation, there are cross-functional impacts that certain workflows may have if you send a particular catalog item to an approver group that's outside of IT. And so we uncover that all the time, right? Where, oh no, all of a sudden, like HR wants it to work this way, but IT's saying it should work this way. And there is no internal consensus before the project. So thank you for bringing that up. I hope every customer now goes forward and meets internally before they engage with us. But isn't that nice to think about?
Absolutely.
Well, excellent. Well, Brianna, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. This has been Flow at Work, and we will catch you on the next episode.